It was quite an amazing experience, and I finally got to a spot where there was a clear kind of view of the horizon, which is what I was looking for, away from all the the house and the street lights and everything. And I just stood there and I watched the show, and I remember looking up for so long. My neck started to hurt, and it was just crazy. And going back to my mental health, this was one of my big moments for me. Is that I kind of, as I stood there watching for so long, I kind of got into my thoughts, and I remember just thinking that, this is coming from space. This is something bigger than just me or Earth. I didn't know all the science behind Aurora at the time, but I did know it was coming from the sun. And I just started thinking about how small I felt with all this going on around me, and I just started to think, like, why am I even here on this Earth? Does it even matter? Some very bizarre thoughts going through my mind. My name is Mike Whiting. I'm 37 years old. I'm from Hamilton, Ontario, and I'm a sales manager. I left Ontario to come to Alberta in December 2019. It was basically a work opportunity, but my wife also has some family out here in Calgary area. So yeah, I took the opportunity. Wasn't really necessarily looking for a change or anything like that, but seemed like could be a good adventure. It wasn't something really I was thinking about all the time, like making a big move like that. Before I moved out here, I wasn't really sure what to think. I'd only came out once before, kind of as a vacation to visit some family. So I had a little bit of an idea, but I wasn't entirely sure. And I was really pleasantly surprised. I really enjoy like the easy access to nature, outdoor activities, that kind of stuff. So my struggles with mental health, they really started after I moved to Alberta. I think that I was probably a little bit unhappy with my lifestyle before moving out here. I didn't really realize it. And as much as, I said all those great things about Alberta just a few seconds ago, and that, the great activities, outdoor activities, access to nature, that sort of thing, it was still a big move, moving my family out. I got a young family, wife and young daughter. And I think it was just maybe the transition coming out here and kind of your whole world changing. I'm not really sure the reason why I fell into that kind of depression and anxiety. I don't think people need a reason for it. Your brain just stops working, properly. So, and you fall into kind of a bad routine with the way that you're thinking, and that's kind of where things headed for me. Really, a lot of the things you hear about all the time: exercise, get outdoors in nature, meditation, talking to a professional, that sort of thing. So worked really hard at those types of things. They helped my mental health, but it felt like constant work for me. So even though I was doing all those things and feeling better, it just felt like work. It felt like chores every day, just to kind of feel almost normal. What I was hoping for was to finally feel, happy, normal again. I was depressed. I had very anxious moments. I wasn't sleeping well, which really made everything much worse. I'd have weeks where I didn't sleep more than a couple hours each night. The longest I'd ever gone without sleep was about 40 hours, I think was my record. And then even I remember when I did get some sleep, I maybe slept just a few hours. So the insomnia can really snowball. And, with my depression, I felt like I was letting my family down. When you're not feeling yourself and you're not sleeping, you're anxious, it's hard to be, a productive member of the family. So you feel like you're letting them down, feel like you've let yourself down, or, whatever you have in your own head about, who you want to be or how you want to contribute to your family or your friends, or that sort of thing. Yeah, so the anxiety was something that I hadn't really dealt with before, other than typical worrying about things, or being anxious before something that you have to go or do, or and something like that. But the anxiety, when I really struggled, it was physical as well, like physical, almost panic attacks, heart racing, you know, body shaking, that type of anxiety, where a lot of times I didn't even understand where it was coming from. It was a small trigger and it could set me off. Yeah, when you have all those things going on, and the lack of sleep, it's really difficult to get out of that place. Talking about mental health is a generational thing. For me, I'm kind of on that cusp. I'm a millennial technically, but just barely. So I was kind of in between, where I saw, people that are just a little bit older than me, almost look at it as like something that's, maybe embarrassing, or, don't want to talk about it because that must mean something's wrong with me, even though obviously everybody's affected by mental health in one way or another, or to different degrees at some point in time. So it's interesting, my age group, I think, or where I'm at, because I saw a little bit of both, but because I had peers that were, or family that were slightly older or slightly younger than me, it gave me kind of both perspectives. And I kind of always leaned more towards the talking about it and being open about it. Maybe not at first, but more so not at first, because I don't think I truly realized what I was going through until it got much worse. But once it did and I started talking about it, one of the things I was amazed at is there was a few people that reached out to me that I had no idea were going through something. And they, once they heard that, once I openly spoke about my issues, it was all of a sudden, oh, I'm going through something similar like this. Can you tell me how you worked on it, or were you thinking like that? Like, even people just hearing that you were having the same thoughts as them was helpful to them. So, yeah. November 4th, 2021, that was the first time that I really saw the Northern Lights on full display. I had seen them once before, but nothing like that night. So really what happened is, I remember it was getting late, I was trying to stay up, and I knew it was going to be a good potential for a good Aurora show that night. I'd been following the Alberta Aurora Chasers Facebook page. Everybody was talking about what could happen. But not a lot was going on, either out my window, or with the data. Nobody's posting pictures of anything happening yet. And it was just past midnight, and I remember I was about to go to bed. And I saw one post from someone who's now my friend, Dylan Kaniski, talking about how he was seeing some band starting to form in the sky. And based on what was happening, he thought it was about to go down. So I decided to stay up just a little bit longer. I packed all my stuff up, started to head out to the car, and just as I got outside my house, I remember distinctly, just as I reached for my car door handle, the light on the ground, there was like a flashing, and at first I was kind of confused. I thought maybe there was an emergency vehicle or something on my street. I kind of looked around, didn't see anything, and then finally the sky caught my eye, and there was just this pulsating in the sky. There was colors halfway up the sky. There was swirling movements over my head, and that was just crazy. Next probably 30 or 45 minutes just spent outside my house, in my front yard, my backyard, with my wife, watching a bit of the show. Um, and then she decided to go back to bed, and I decided it was time to start going in and trying to find some better views. It was about probably getting close to 2 a.m. at that time. And like I said, I decided to venture out. So I started walking through my neighborhood, trying to find, a clear view of the horizon so I could watch some more of the show. And it was really surreal to me because as I'm watching, these colors flash and dance in the sky, all directions, there was nobody else that was awake. There was nobody on the streets. Seemed like nobody's house lights were on inside. So it was kind of a surreal feeling, like walking around, watching everything happen around me, like the show was just going on just for me. Nobody else was there, and it was quite an amazing experience. And I finally got to a spot where there was a clear kind of view of the horizon, which is what I was looking for, away from all the house and the street lights and everything. And I just stood there and I watched the show, and I remember looking up for so long, my neck started to hurt, and it was just crazy. And going back to my mental health, this was one of my big moments for me, is that I kind of, as I stood there watching for so long, I kind of got into my thoughts, and I remember just thinking that, this is coming from space. This is something bigger than just me or Earth. I didn't know all the science behind Aurora at the time, but I did know it was coming from the sun. And I just started thinking about how small I felt with all this going on around me. And I just started to think, like, why am I even here on this Earth? Does it even matter? Some very bizarre thoughts going through my mind. Suddenly it just, like I said, I felt small. I felt like my problems don't really matter. Like, how can I try to control everything I'm trying to control in my life if, there's something so much bigger than me? And I kind of popped out of a bubble that I didn't even know I was in, where I'd been so focused on myself for the past, couple of years, my whole life really, but especially with my struggle with mental health, so obsessed about my problems, which now seemed really, really small. So it was a huge moment for me, because that was kind of my moment where I realized that, all my problems, there's still problems. People have problems, and they just didn't seem to matter to me anymore. And I felt differently after that night.